Welcome back to So Many Secrets. Last time, Elyana learned that she is an alien. We're skipping ahead today to chapter 14, which Jerry will read from us. We'll meet FBI Agent Strang as he gets a call from Elyana's psychiatrist.
So Many Secrets. Chapter 14. The Lansing, Michigan Dome, Tuesday, August 24th, 2083. The sudden jingle of the phone startled FBI Agent Strang. Action on a Tuesday morning. He pushed the audio-only button and listened to the silky-voiced psychotherapist describe an encounter and subsequent hypnosis of a young girl he suspected was an alien. Seriously? An alien? The story sounded absurd. Are you sure this isn't some fantasy the girl concocted? Absolutely. Patients don't lie or fantasize while under hypnosis. This is well documented and is accepted within the scientific community. Strang decided to hear the doctor out and check his claims later. What she revealed under hypnosis was pretty compelling, but it is only part of the story. While she was under stress in my office, lights blinked uncontrollably and my clock went haywire. There's no explanation other than that she was somehow responsible. And both my secretary and I witnessed her touching a dying bonsai tree and bring it back to perfect health. Strang absently drummed on the desk with a pencil. He'd need something more compelling to take action. The girl's physical appearance is so unusual. At 15, she's over 7 feet tall, and her eyes are so strange, she hid them with sunglasses. When you look directly into them, you sense someone with extreme intelligence and power. The sudden tremor in the doctor's voice arrested Strang's attention in a way that the hypnosis business hadn't. He had damped the visual of the doctor when the call came in because he preferred concentrating first on voices. Now he wanted to see the man, and he turned the visual on. Ah, there you are, Dr. Cummings said. Strang regarded the aristocratic-looking man with a touch of envy that was mitigated by the anguish he saw in the man's eyes. I understand it wasn't an easy decision to call me. Yes, obviously there was a day when patient privacy was sacred. Strang heard the hint of criticism in his voice, but ignored it. The doctor continued, and it's possible I'm wrong. Something like this is so hard to believe. I was questioning my own perceptions, but I became alarmed when she didn't keep her appointment. When I called to check on her, the Andersons made excuses for her absence. Legally, she is to be in my care until I release her. That's true, Doctor. What's your best guess about the Andersons? Do you think they know she's an alien and are trying to cover it up? They must know something. They've obviously seen her eyes, and I suspect they've seen her ability to affect her environment. Plus, I find no record of her birth certificate or of Mrs. Anderson's having given birth. Strang dropped the pencil. Finally, something concrete he could investigate. If any of this was true, it definitely was evidence of illegal activity. When the doctor had nothing more to report, he asked to be informed if the girl came back or if something new developed. Strang disconnected the call and leaned back into his chair. If the girl was an alien, this deserved attention at the highest level. Senator Lambert, Strang's boss, would take the idea and run with it. Lights from the alien craft had been spotted for years, but interception of their ships proved impossible. At the mention of aliens, Lambert fairly frothed at the mouth. He was almost as rabid about them as he was about not providing food to people outside the domes. This was something that could make or break his career. If he could give Lambert a real alien, he'd cement his position, maybe even move from Michigan to Washington. But if he failed, Lambert would be merciless. Strang didn't want to botch it and decided he needed some proof. He researched the Andersons and their maybe alien daughter. The doc was right. There was nothing in the database about Elyana or Mrs. Anderson giving birth. This was going to be fun. When Mrs. Anderson answered the door, Strang flashed his badge. She was a petite, attractive woman who didn't seem surprised to see him. Come in. I'll let my husband know you're here. She showed him into the living room and walked toward the back of the apartment. He looked around while he waited for them. It was a pleasant room with cream-colored walls that displayed watercolors of trees and birds and flowers, furniture that looked lived in and comfortable, nothing to set off alarm bells. They came into the room together. He turned and they exchanged introductions. Mr. Anderson had a stocky build that was a couple inches shy of 6 feet. He motioned Strang into a chair. "What can we do for you, Agent Strang?" "I have a few questions. Dr. Cummings called and reported that your daughter, Elyana, was missed several sessions. I'm sure you realize that her appointments were not voluntary." Strang leaned forward a bit and watched the couple seated together across from him. They were doing their best not to appear nervous, but their body language suggested otherwise. Mrs. Anderson threw her shoulders back and spoke. "We called and told him she was ill. Why is he reporting this?" Strang ignored her question. "Is she here now, or at the hospital?" He knew they knew he could verify whatever they said. Something in Mrs. Anderson broke. Her face went from confrontation to alarm, before it settled into what he assumed was grim acceptance. Mr. Anderson put his arm around her, and he sagged against him. Strang waited for them to regain composure, and was surprised when Mrs. Anderson rose and left the room. She walked past the apartment entrance to a closed door facing him. When she opened the door and walked in, he saw a tablet on the desk. Mrs. Anderson picked up something from the desk and couldn't hide her tears as she came back and handed him the paper. He read Elyana's note, and the back of his neck prickled in an alarm. "How long has she been gone?" Mrs. Anderson responded, "After the last session with the doctor, she seemed really upset but wouldn't talk about it. We went to bed Friday night and the next morning found the note." That meant the girl had been gone 4 days, and it would be more difficult to find her. Strang made no attempt to hide his anger as he leaned into their space and said, "You haven't reported it? I'd know if you had." Mr. Anderson also leaned forward as though trying to appear confident of his innocence. "She left the note. There was no foul play. We thought she needed some space to think about things." He sank back into the sofa. "We just didn't think it would take her this long." Mr. Anderson's words sounded rehearsed. Even though the man had done his best to look contrite, he sounded a bit too controlled under the circumstances. Strang was sure they were hiding something, but he knew he needed some proof before taking them in. "So have you contacted her friends? Maybe a boyfriend?" Mrs. Anderson shook her head. "Elyana doesn't have any close friends. She's always been too big and too smart to get on with kids her own age, and she wasn't emotionally mature enough to connect with older kids. It's been very hard on her. We've tried to give her a good family life, but I know it doesn't compensate." She leaned against her husband, who held her close. There was genuine anguish in her voice, but Strang still felt something wasn't right. He would use his resources to find the girl, and if that failed, he'd be back. He stood and gave Mr. Anderson his card. "Please call me if you think of anything, or if she does show up. Could I take a look at her room on the way out?" "Of course," Mrs. Anderson said, and led him to the bedroom. He looked in her closet and whistled when he saw her slacks. "How tall is she?" he asked, even though he knew the answer. 7'5". "Do you have a recent photo?" Mr. Anderson excused himself and came back with a headshot of Elyana. Strang was disappointed, but not surprised to see she was wearing sunglasses. Does she always wear those glasses? Looks strange in a photograph. Her eyes are very sensitive to light, so yes, she always wears them. He scanned the room and then picked up her tablet. This might help us figure out where she went. Yes, of course. Strang suspected they had looked and deleted stuff, but his tech staff had ways of retrieving information. From Mrs. Anderson's controlled expression, he was sure that she knew that. "I'll be in touch." He pulled the tablet against his side and was thankful that search warrants were a thing of the past. It made his job so much easier. He walked to the elevator and wondered why a clever girl would leave her tablet. It didn't take his staff long to retrieve the information about her investigation of alien sightings and the food drop to the St. Joseph settlement. Maybe she wanted to be found, or wanted to let her folks know where she'd gone. Strang searched the camera records on the Andersons' building starting at 10 o'clock Friday night, but saw no one that was tall enough to be a girl, even in disguise. Then at 11:16, the hall camera on Anderson's floor blinked out for nearly a minute, and at 11:17, the front entrance camera went blank and came back on as the door closed. He found more blips heading west on Michigan Avenue, then nothing. Strang remembered the doctor claiming the girl had affected his lights and clock. It looked like she had unusual powers. He paced around the room. One of the perks of heading up the FBI operations in Michigan was having a room big enough to walk around in. Before he called Lambert, he needed to figure out where Elyana went. An involuntary shiver shook him. Lambert would go ballistic when he heard about the alien, if that's what she truly was. Strang needed to be sure of his facts. It was evident the girl was interested in the St. Joseph settlement area, but it would be suicide to go out there unless she also had powers that protected her from the dangerous rays and the heat. She would need food. That would mean people. Yes, she'd researched the food route to the St. Joseph settlement. Time to visit the folks at off-site delivery.
Thank you, Jerry. Next time in our video, we will learn what action Agent Strang takes after he hears about Elyana.